Introducing Scott Ritter's YouTube channel, a platform dedicated to discussing the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Scott Ritter, an expert in international relations, provides in-depth analysis and commentary on the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. With his extensive knowledge and first-hand experience, Scott Ritter offers unique insights into the historical background, geopolitical complexities, and humanitarian aspects of the conflict. Join his channel to gain a comprehensive understanding of the crisis, including its impact on regional stability and global politics. Through well-researched and balanced content, Scott Ritter's YouTube channel serves as a valuable resource for anyone interested in delving deeper into the Russian-Ukrainian war.
Okay, our next question is from Moscow, Anna Yerpolova. Anna asks, senior officials from about 24 major intelligence agencies recently met in Singapore. U.S. Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines and colleagues from India and China were there. What could be the consequences of this COVID for the situation in Ukraine and the world? What can the United States offer China and India in exchange for refusing to support Russia?
Well, I'll answer the last part of that question first. Not a damn thing. Especially China. China understands the strategic stakes involved, and China is not going to commit suicide by suddenly reversing course on a strategic objective of achieving a multipolarity world. For the United States to buy off China means that China is accepting American hegemony. And China will never accept American hegemony. India won't accept it either. Will India and China continue to work with the United States on select issues, including many that pertain to intelligence? Yes, there are shared interests right now. Fact is, the only dialogue taking place between China and the United States right now is intelligence-driven dialogue, not only in Singapore, but we have reports that William Burns, the CIA director, the master of the back channel, has flown to China and met with the Chinese. He's the only one talking to the Chinese because they refuse to talk to Secretary of Defense Austin or Mike Milley, the military-to-military contact, which is so necessary at this point in time to reduce tensions, just isn't taking place. But I think, in the intelligence sharing world, it's primarily dealing with terrorism, how to deal with terrorism, piracy, things of that nature. The United States and China do not have a strategic intelligence relationship. Remember, China believes the United States is using the Uyghur population to promote domestic unrest and terrorism. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. There's nothing that the United States can offer either China or India to get them to stop supporting Russia.
Next question comes from the Bronx, Ben Gvir. Did you visit the Jewish Autonomous Oblast, JAO, the only Jewish territory besides Israel? Are the Jews happy there, like in Chechnya? Why don't Israeli Jews want to move there? Free land, and they can expect no trouble from Moscow, right?
I didn't visit it, and to be honest, I'm not overly familiar with it, so I can't answer any of these questions.
All right. I think we'll just interpret that as anti-Semitism. Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not?
All right. The next, why don't we take a voicemail message from Johan Nordquist.
Hi, Scott. I wonder when will your film documentary over your Russian book tour be released, and how long will it be, and also how will it be released? Thank you for all what you're doing. It's fantastic to follow you. Have a good day. Bye.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, there will be a documentary. It's in we are in the active pre-production stage, which means, well, first of all, the filming has been done. I'm just collecting the film and gathering the filming. What we're doing right now is we're coming up with a trailer concept so that as I travel around the country promoting the book and promoting an anti-Russophobia standpoint, where I will hopefully engage in talks, discussions, lectures, whatever you want to call them, town hall meetings on my trip on Russia. We will use the trailer as part of the presentation to generate interest in this. The goal is to have a feature-length documentary film of the highest possible quality, released by June of next year. Now, that could be overly optimistic. I haven't run this by anybody who actually has reviewed all the materials and understands what's necessary and say that's unrealistic or realistic. But that's the goal. A full-length, a feature-length documentary of the highest quality that will be released for viewing by June of next year. Now, how will we release it? Again, an exact marketing strategy has yet to be worked out because normally that's linked with money, funding, etc. But I will tell you that my goal is to release it in the normal way the documentary is released, to enter it into as many film festivals as possible, to generate excitement, and hopefully get people to purchase it for viewing on other media platforms. I can tell you that one of the film festivals that I would like to enter it in will be the Moscow Film Festival in Russia, which means we would have to come out with a Russian language version of this movie, which is something I think is eminently doable. So, Jeff, did I tick off all the boxes? Did I miss anything?
You not only ticked off all the boxes, you set me up beautifully to segue into a little bit of an announcement that we have now gone back to posting some videos of these podcasts or excerpts from them with a Russian translation, the first of which was posted earlier today. So go to the U.S. Tour of Duty channel. If you are Russian and you speak some English, but you are craving to hear it in Russian, you can now do it. Spread the word amongst Russian folks. More of that to come. The next question comes from Keith in Los Angeles. Wouldn't it be great to point people to travel agents that could organize low-key trips like Scott is suggesting? Perhaps Scott could pop in via video to connect with the groups here and there. Also, perhaps consider crowdsourcing the winter trip and starting that now. It seems a true people's outreach is one thing that's needed. What do you think of this travel agent idea?
Well, first of all, I don't know enough about travel to Russia, what's possible in the United States or not. I know that there are travel agents in Russia. That would be linked to a tourist visa, and there's specific processes involved in that. I did not go that route. I went to Russia on a working visa because I was considered a working journalist promoting a book. And so that was a completely different route. I'm not in the travel agency business, and frankly speaking, I don't want to be in the travel agency business. But there are people who are, and I think Jeff and I know some. And I take your question seriously, and I think what needs to happen then, in order to answer it properly, is that Jeff and I need to reach out to these people and get a good answer for you about how this can happen, the right processes to go. And maybe I can write an article or post something on Substack for people to handle. In terms of the winter trip, I think the crowdsourcing will probably be more affiliated with the if we go to Russia as part of the documentary film. That would be something that we would undertake, and funding and support for that would be useful. The winter trip, if there is a winter trip, I think is going to be something a little bit different. It's still forming. I don't want to commit to anything right now, but there's an idea for a broader delegation to go for a shorter period of time for a more targeted impact. And even Jeff doesn't know about this yet. So he's sitting there looking at me with this look saying, "What have you done?" I'll let him know. But it's still working.
All I know is Ryan's going in August.
Right, that's right. And Ryan, but see, Ryan is the personification of what you're talking about. People taking their own initiative to go and continue the journey. I mean, this is a joint journey. So Ryan's going to go, and he's going to do his own thing. But it's part of the same mission. The mission is to go out and meet people, broaden horizons, etc. And I encourage as many people as possible to do that. And whatever we can do to help facilitate that would be wonderful.
In the same spirit, on our Sunday podcast, which we do every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time with Arkady Itkin and the lovely Tory Mansfield. Arkady suggested that we ask the audience to take a look at a speech that Vladimir Putin made in 2021 about the decay of Western civilization as just one way, kind of an arbitrary way, but he thinks a good way, and we'll talk about why he thinks it's a good way next Sunday, just to get some direct familiarity with Putin, because here in the U.S., people tend to get everything through a filter. Usually it's propaganda, frankly. And so Arkady had what I thought was a very good idea. So we've posted it on our YouTube channel. So if the audience checks it out prior to next Sunday, it'll be more meaningful for you when we have this discussion next Sunday at 1 o'clock on this same channel. So tune in for that. The next question comes from George Taylor, Rocky Mountains. Much talk in the Western press on the success of the Patriot missile system, but I also hear it takes many Patriot missiles to knock down a single Kinzhal missile. Can you share any insight? Does it cost more to intercept the Kinzhal than it costs the Russians to make them?
Well, with all due respect, George, what information are you reading? I don't think a single Kinzhal has been shot down by a Patriot. In fact, there's the distinct possibility that the Kinzhals have taken all 3 Patriot batteries provided to Ukraine out of action. It doesn't mean they destroyed everything about it, but the indication is that significant components of all 3 Patriot batteries have been destroyed by the Kinzhal missile. Why? Because a Patriot can't shoot it down. Now, that doesn't mean that if the Kinzhal fired in a vacuum all by itself in an isolated fashion that the Patriot couldn't eventually get a targeting solution and shoot it down. But the Russians know how to fight a war. So what you do is you confuse, you overwhelm the Patriot system, which operates, by the way, in automatic mode. Because the Ukrainian people operating it just don't know the system well enough to manually take over and work through distractions, work through things that the Russians are doing to confuse the system. A good Patriot operator would come in, go on manual mode, and disregard this, disregard that, disregard this, and hopefully get a firing solution eventually. Because the human brain is the greatest resource people have ever had, but it has to be a trained brain, an experienced brain. The Ukrainians aren't that, so they go on automatic, and what you see is that the Russians have figured this out. And so what you'll see is the Patriot engages and it begins to fire off missiles in a standard response. They're not achieving the outcome desired, and as the system comes closer and closer, the missile goes into panic mode until eventually it's just firing everything it off in a desperate attempt to survive, and then bam, gone. Sorry, cat. Just scared the cat. But so the Patriot isn't a good weapon system. It's not. It's a system that was designed back in the day of the Safeguard. A lot of the Safeguards in the 1960s, early 1970s anti-ballistic missile system. Safeguard had automation built into it, and so the Patriot has assumed a lot of this automation, but it's never been a good system. It couldn't shoot down a Scud during the Gulf War. I personally attest to that. It killed more Allied airplanes than Iraqi missiles during the 2003 invasion, and then it didn't protect the Saudi oil fields very well from Houthi drones and missiles. So the idea that the Patriot is some sort of magic system that can shoot down a Kinzhal is absurd. The Kinzhal right now, I think the score is 3-0 in favor of Kinzhal over Patriot. All right.
Has your cat recovered?
It's purring, so yeah.
I don't think you've ever revealed the name of your cat.
Sure. This is Anubis.
Anubis. How do you spell that?
Anubis. It's the name of an Egyptian god. Anubis.
Anubis. That is a great exotic name. Better than E. Jean Carroll's name for her cat. Have you heard about what that is?
No.
Or her cat was named Vagina.
That's
why would you do that to me? Why would you do that to me?
I didn't do that to you. Olya from Toronto. In your that, by the way, that's Trump was complaining that certain evidence wasn't allowed in the trial. That E. Jean Carroll's the woman who accused him of raping her.
Okay.
That was one of the things that wasn't allowed in. Olya from Toronto. In your recent show, you mentioned that Russian forces took out 3 Patriot systems. Can you please elaborate? If any of your sources are publicly available, please share.
Well, we just talked about it. The sources are the videos themselves. The video evidence of Patriot systems engaging, and then a flash, and then the Patriot systems no longer engaging. One of the videos appears to show Patriot missiles that are firing off not as a result of intentional firing, but as a result of explosions on the ground after a Kinzhal missile is impacted. So there's 3 videos out there showing Kinzhal Patriot engagements, and all 3 seem to show that the Patriot system has been impacted in a meaningful fashion.
Okay, not much more to be said than that. Tobias Stone from the great state of Michigan. Why do you think China doesn't arm Russia in this conflict? Are they afraid of Western sanctions, considering how much they benefit financially from trade with Europe?
Well, 2 things. One, Russia doesn't need China to arm it. Russia doesn't want China to arm it. Russia's in a war where, what weapons would they buy from China? Remember that weapon systems are developed to be absorbed by the military system that ordered the weapon. The Chinese have their own system, their own accounting system, logistics system, maintenance system, operational theory, etc., that the weapons are designed to, conform to. If you try and take this weapon and plug it into a Russian system, which is largely foreign to that, which wasn't taken into account when building the system, now you have to retrain the Russians totally, and that's just not what the Russians are about. That's with complex systems. Now we get down to artillery. Let's say that the Chinese artillery is compatible with the Russian artillery. Does Russia really want to be in a situation where it now, in order to continue military operations, it has to be reliant upon Chinese supplies of artillery ammunition? And then what happens if China ever does cut that secret deal with America and China hits the pause switch on artillery? That means Russia has now allowed its strategic survival to be hijacked by the Chinese. Russia won't allow that to happen with any country. So no, Russia's not in the business of allowing its military capabilities to be controlled by foreign powers. Russia has an extraordinarily advanced, capable defense industry, establishment that is punching out a lot of ammunition, including artillery ammunition, in far greater quantities than the West is, by the way. The idea that Russia's running out of ammunition is absurd. The idea that Russia's running out of anything is absurd. So Russia doesn't need to go to China or any other nation for any military equipment.
Okay. Yusuf Mohammed from Damascus, Syria. When my president was invited to the Arab Summit last month, I was hoping the Sunni Arab countries would stop funding rebels to fight in Syria. But since the summit, nothing has changed. What's the future of Syria in terms of peace and ending this conflict?
I think the key is with Turkey. It's Turkey. Yes, the Sunni Arab countries provide funding, but Turkey provides the security guarantees. If it weren't for Turkey, Idlib would be conquered almost immediately by the Syrian government forces. And so what I think is happening here is that the Arabs don't want to get ahead of a peace process. They don't want to create a situation where the negotiating position of the Islamic forces in Syria is somehow compromised. So they will continue to make them viable by providing supporting, waiting for the ultimate diplomatic resolution between Syria and Turkey, because that's what's needed. Syria and Turkey have to come to an understanding about what's going to happen. At that point in time, once that agreement has been reached, then I think the funding will either diminish or be transitioned away from military support into purely economic support in an effort to fiscally support whatever solution they come up with. But it's Syria and Turkey that has to sit down at the table and figure this one out.
All right, let's take one more of the questions that were submitted in advance. And if you want to have your question considered for the next episode, which is Friday night, you can go to scottritter.us, scottritter.us, and you can submit it in writing or leave a voice message just by clicking on a button. Freedom from Vienna. Have you thought about doing an interview with Jordan Peterson? Millions of people around the world listen to him. Your reach could greatly expand while teaching him and his audience about geopolitical affairs. He did an interview, so to speak, with Netanyahu.
I'm not opposed to the idea. I think the more important question is, would Jordan Peterson want to be interviewed by me? He's the one with the millions of followers. I think I would have from a just a purely, I don't want to say business perspective because I don't do business, but we would benefit. It's not like Jordan Peterson needs our followers. I'm grateful for our followers. Many of our followers probably follow Jordan Peterson. I don't know. But the idea of him saying, I've got to get a hold of all Scott Ritter's followers when he has millions is strange. And so the question is, what gain is it for him? There's lots of gain for us. I would love to have a conversation with Peterson. I would love to be able to access his audience. Why do you think that we talked to Alex Jones? It's not like Alex Jones and I are on the same sheet of music on everything, but Alex Jones has an audience. And Alex Jones provided a viable platform, a respectful platform that allowed us to have a good, solid conversation that got to people who otherwise wouldn't have heard it. So would I like to do the same thing and access Jordan Peterson's audience to help broaden, not just our base, but broaden the scope and scale of the knowledge and information we're trying to impart? Yeah, I would, but it's not up to me. It's up to Jordan Peterson, and we'll see what happens.
I just want to point out that the questioner didn't really specify who the interviewer and who the interviewee would be in his mind. He said, would you do an interview? So I don't know. Could go either way. The other thing is, I don't think Jordan Peterson necessarily selects his conversational partner based on how big their audience is. I think he picks it based on what would be an interesting conversation. So
you know more about Jordan Peterson than I do, it seems. So I'll put the baton in your hands.
All right, fair enough. And I'm also going to reach out to some travel agents. I've actually already started to put out feelers. All right, Ann, you got some questions for us coming in live on YouTube and Facebook? Yes, you do. And thanks to our beloved audience, and thanks in particular to those who are donating, such as Darius King. We appreciate it. 60 Minutes recently had an episode about how big contractors overcharge the U.S. military because they know the U.S. doesn't have anywhere else to go for weapons. Is it true what they're saying?
100% true. I mean, it's just standard knowledge of how this works. Cost overruns, et cetera. It's accepted practice. It shouldn't be accepted. One would think that you would be able to shut down a corrupt contractor who underbid, knowing that halfway through, once a certain amount of money has been sunk in, they will renegotiate and say, well, we have cost overruns, this happened, and next thing you know, a $200 million system has become a $5 billion system, which has become a $40 billion system, which has become a $100 billion system. That's how it works. And the fact of the matter is, there is no competition. There's nobody else to turn to. They all play the same game. So this is why we have such a bloated defense budget, and this is why we have such a crappy military, because why is the Air Force dumping the F-22 fighter? Ask yourself that question. Because it sucks. It doesn't work. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It's too expensive to operate. It's a bad airplane. F-35 is even worse, but we can't acknowledge that because our entire future in terms of exports and our strategy for air hinges on the F-35, but it doesn't work. It literally is a piece of garbage aircraft. Why? Because of the way the defense industry works. There's no accountability. I'm not saying that this should be the way it happens, but Stalin during World War II let people know that they better produce things, they better get it there on time, and it better work. And the consequences for none of that happening were dire. Not messing around. We're dealing with the nation's defense, so there should be no room for greed. We really should have patriots in these businesses who look out for the interests of the country. Yes, it's a business. Yes, you make money, but it doesn't have to be an obscene amount of money. I would be the first one to recommend that there should be no boards for defense industry. Because when you have a board, the board's only interested in the dividend, the profit, the stock value. So they'll play stupid games and they'll allow things to happen where they get to jack up prices, manipulate supply to generate more content. Well, they'll lie about performance. Raytheon is lying about Patriot performance. Why? Because they need to create the impression that the Patriot works so they can sell it overseas. The U.S. military-industrial complex is one of the most fundamentally corrupt institutions in the world, and it's the American taxpayer that pays for it. And it's the American service member. Remember, these men and women in uniform we claim we support, we're giving them crap weapons. So if and when they do go to war against a near-peer force, we're condemning them to death.